Are you looking for things that you can add to your piano practice that will really help take your two-handed piano playing to the next level? Well, guess what we're talking about today. Some of these things you may have seen before, like scales, but I'm going to give you more information about scales, but not just that. I have a lot of other exercises I want you to add, and actually some pieces that I think would be great to improve your two-handed piano playing. So let's get right on to it. Okay, first thing I want to mention is about the 5 levels. So I constructed this lesson based on these 5 levels because the first few things I'm going to mention are pretty easy, and these are the things that I recommend you start with. Like if you don't know your scales, start with that. Makes a lot of sense. Scales are played, one note at a time. It makes it a little bit easier. But once you are proficient at level 1, then you want to move on to level 2, then level 3, and it's actually layered. You'll actually be doing you'll master level 1 and then you'll move on to level 2, but you're still going to be practicing level 1 because you never really should not be practicing your scales altogether. Even me, I have them fairly mastered, but I need to practice them every now and again because they kind of fall out of my hands. I mean, they kind of get rusty. So it's always a good idea as you're moving through these levels to layer them. You want to be doing level 1 and level 2, level 3, like if you're up to level 5, doing all of them in your practice routine, or at least some of your practice routines throughout the week. So I just wanted to mention that so it made more sense to you. Okay, level 1 is a major and minor scales in parallel motion. This is very standard stuff. I've talked about it a bunch of times, but what you want to do is I would learn 1 octave first. Pretty easy, you go up 1 octave. Then obviously learn how to do 2 octaves, learn that finger cross. I have a great video on this I just made. I'll try to remember to link you to it in the description. And then you want to learn 3. You want to learn up to 4 octaves for each scale. And this will actually come in handy in a minute when we talk about some of the next levels. So start learning your major scales. Start with 1 scale at a time. Learn C, then G, then D, then A, E, B, and then so forth. And then learn at least your harmonic minor scales. All right, let's get on to level 2 since I've talked about level 1 in a lot of other videos. Okay, level 2 is Hanon and Cherny. Everybody pronounces it a little bit different. Exercises. Basically, you want to learn notes first and then practice these with the metronome. You want to do 1 at a time. So when you're starting out your practice session, maybe I'm going to do a Hanon exercise and maybe a scale. And, try to master 1 of those at a time. And then once you master all your scales and all your Hanons, you can run through a bunch of them as a warm-up for you. But let's take a look at more detail into these a little bit. So you can get almost any Hanon exercise at hanon-online.com. We have it up here right now. I'll try to remember to link it to you in the description. And anyway, if you climb down here, you obviously want to start with level 1. Makes sense to me. And then you scroll down, and then there should be a PDF you can download. So you click on that once you download it. And all these are simple, kind of 5-finger exercises where, actually, let me show you here. I think I can show you a little bit better. Right here. And each one has kind of a pattern I want you to work on. They're each designed to really strengthen a certain part of your hand. And like the scales, it's really good because, and this is a good level 2, because you're not playing different rhythms at different times. You're just playing the same rhythm. So you're really just focusing on syncing up both hands, which can be a challenge at first for sure. So learn 1 of these. What you want to do is you want to learn it, and then you want to try to play it with the metronome. I would honestly start the metronome at something really easy, like maybe 80 or less than that, because these are 16th notes. So for every beep and click, beep, click, 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 beep, click, 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 beep, click, click, click. You don't know a metronome, that's what metronomes do. I don't have one in front of me right now, but that's generally how you want to do it. Remember that you're going to be hitting 4 notes for each of the beats that go by. So keep in mind that you want to start on the slower side, and then you want to bump up the tempo gradually. So you play it through once at 80, you like it, you can do it, you bump it up to 90, and then, warm up to that, see if you can do that. And then try to get your first run through of these up at 100. Once you learn them all, which there are a lot of them, then go through them again and try bumping up the tempo some more, maybe up to 120. Okay, and then Czerny exercises are the same kind of deal. However, and these, I'm getting these, by the way, from pianoexercises.org /exercises/Cherni. Now, if you scroll down, you can see there's a lot to choose from. So obviously you want to start at the top of the list, work your way down. These are the 100 progressive studies. I've played through these ones. I haven't played through every work that he's done. As you can see, the great thing about these this time is that it's fairly simple music. However, now you don't have the same exact things going on between each hand, so you really have to concentrate a bit more. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, very easy, at least if you've been playing piano for a little while. I messed up a little there, I'd play it again. So you want to learn one of these a day. Same kind of thing with your Hannon, and it's just going to give you something a little different to practice with different rhythms between each hand, because that's what we're doing at the levels. And I should have mentioned this in the beginning. The way the levels work is level 1 is you're playing the same note between both hands, right? And an octave apart. That makes it a little bit more manageable when you're first learning how to do hands together. And then you want to gradually move to where you have different things going on in each hand, but still simple, to where you can still process the notes. And then, as you see, once we get to level 5, then the challenge comes in. All right, let's get on to level 3. Okay, level 3 is back to scales, but this time you're going to be playing your scales in quarters, eighths, triplets, and sixteenths. Let me show you what I mean by this, because there's a little bit more to it than the description I have written there for you. Okay, back to the drawing board, aka the piano. Taking the key of C just for an example. You want to first play it in quarters, going up 1 octave. And you want to do this for all your scales. Okay, now what you want to do is, after you do 1 octave quarters, you want to do 2 octaves eighth notes. Remember that the eighth notes will be twice as fast. You can use a metronome if you want. Then, this is why I said you want to learn up to 4 octaves, because now we're going to do 3 octaves in triplets, and you have to do it in 3 octaves or it won't work. So remember, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, so that's how you do triplets. If you have to go just to make sure you're getting the triplets and not turning them into eighths, then just make sure you're doing that along with it. Then you want to be playing 4 octaves in sixteenths. So 1 E and a 2 E and a. Like that. I probably should have started an octave lower to give myself some more range. So remember, start with 1 octave quarters, then 2 octaves eighths, 3 octaves triplets, 4 octaves sixteenths. And this will also really help you master your scales. And then, if you want to, use a metronome, so then you can gradually bump up that speed as well. Okay, time for level 4. Now it's scales again, in contrary motion and in thirds. For a challenge, try putting them in quarters, eighths, triplets, and sixteenths from level 3, but applying them to contrary motion and the thirds. Now, this is what I mean by contrary motion. So far, we've been playing our scales in parallel motion, meaning we're moving at the same rate in the same direction. Contrary motion, as you may have surmised, you start on the same note, and then you go out, and then you come back in. And once you do 1 octave in quarters, you can do 2 in eighths. And then in triplets. Oh, I almost had it. Just like that. And then in 16ths, I should have started the quarter slower because now I have to play them real fast. Oh, and it keeps going. Oh, I don't have enough. Can you not do... I don't think you can do 4 octaves going apart because you run out of notes. Well, at least do up the triplets. I proved that you could at least do up the triplets. So try that out. Up the triplets for that. Now I did contrary motion. Now this is what I meant in thirds. So C scale, you're going to start on C, the first note of the scale with your left hand. But with your right hand, you're not starting on the first note of the scale. You're starting on the third note of the scale. This takes a little bit of finesse because the finger crossings, while they happen in the same place in the scale, they happen at a different time than you're used to because you're starting on the third note instead of that first note. Just start to see if you can do 1 octave. And then 2 octaves. I messed with the fingering a little bit there at the end, so you just want to go through it. Make sure you have the correct fingering. So again, your scales, you want to start doing them in contrary motion once you have them mastered already in parallel motion. And then you want to try the thirds. The thirds really gives my brain a workout because, like I said, you really, really have to concentrate on what's going on there. Okay, and then you want to, of course, go through and do that with all your scales. And as you can imagine, it will take some time to do that. Also, if you want to add in a metronome into the mix, maybe after you get the feeling for doing them in thirds and contrary motion, then do it that way. Now, for level 5, which actually doesn't have to do with scales, but you really should be practicing everything up until now, including the Hannon and Cherni, to get to level 5. Level 5 is where you really start to develop your two-handed coordination. Now, let's take a look at what level 5 is all about. Okay, level 5 has 3 levels all in once, and these are all pieces, a collection of pieces that I found that my piano teacher forced me to do, and I absolutely hated it at the time because it was like one of the only things he had me do for a long time. And I didn't really understand why. And the reason why is because these pieces really help your two-handed piano playing. Learning your favorite pop pieces or rock pieces, they're okay, but they're really on the simpler side. They're not really designed to really... well, I guess these aren't. They might be designed to help your two-handed piano playing, but the result of them playing, they're more complicated. They help your two-handed piano playing a lot more than just your standard chords and accompaniment melody on the top. All right, let's take a look into a little bit more detail. Let's take a look at some Bach inventions first. All right, so here we have a Bach invention. Now, what I would do is I would obviously learn these maybe hand separate at first. Fingering is super, super important. They don't have any written here for you, but in general, you want to follow whatever fingering you use for playing your scales. And remember that in general, a good rule of thumb with fingering is that you don't want to go outside of your range. And what that means is, like, I'm looking at this first line here. I notice my lowest note is C. My highest note is A. So I'm probably going to have my fingers somewhere in between there. I'm not going to have my pinky on C because that doesn't make any sense. I don't have to play any notes lower than there. So that's the general rule of thumb. There's more to it than that. And then same thing with the left hand. Look at the range they're giving you. There's no reason to actually have my pinky on C really at much any point because I'm not really playing that many notes above that C. So you want to first learn by learning one of these, actually these inventions. You want to start with number 1. See if you can make it through all of them. It's going to take a while to learn these for sure. But I haven't played them in a while. So, as you can see, it's a real workout for your fingering. If I was practicing this on my own and not showing you right now, I'd probably practice it a little slower. Of course, I have played this one before. After a few playthroughs, I think I would probably have it back underneath my fingers. But as you can see, lots of scale kind of passages, which, hey, I just asked you to do millions of scales, not millions, but a lot of scales, right? A lot of scale practice. So that will really come in handy once you move on to this step. And that's why I've layered all this into these 5 steps. And then obviously there's a ton of these. I don't remember exactly how many there are, but there are certainly a lot to keep you busy and in different time signatures. You're going to want to practice these slow. I honestly would not go for speed at first at all, because it's really about developing your coordination between 2 hands. So you want to be as accurate as possible with your notes. And to accomplish that, you're going to want to slow it way down. You're also going to, I mentioned fingering was important. You want to be writing in your fingering for these. My piano teacher used to always yell at me because I didn't sometimes. And he's like, well, what fingering will you use there? And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of just made it up, but it's never, you want to make sure that you find a fingering that's good for you, but also consistent, that you're using it the same way each time. Because if you use it a different way each time, it's going to cause a lot of confusion. So there's some Bach inventions. Let me show you a little bit about Bach Preludes, which I would start learning. You can probably start learning Bach Preludes after you learn maybe about 4 of these inventions or so. So let me show you some of those. Okay, here we have the Bach Preludes. These are found in a book called The Well-Tempered Clavier. Clavier, if you want to know how to spell clavier. You can type this into Google, and also I got this from imslp.org as well, so you can find the whole collection there. There's a lot of them in here. I believe there are 24 preludes. There's at least 12 in each key. No, there's 48, because there's one for each major and minor key, and then he does them again in book 2. But anyway, a lot of these, especially this first one here, I recommend you start with this one. It's the easiest one by far, I think. But it still does give your fingers a workout. Let's see, here we go. This is the one I wanted. Okay, and I'll start playing it, and you'll see if you recognize it. So there you go. So you may have recognized it or maybe not, but I recommend you start with this Prelude in C as number 1. And then actually you might not want to go in order of this book, because it'll go from C major then to C minor. And you only want to be learning the preludes. After every prelude, if you notice, it says Fuga 1, Fuga 1. These are the fugues. Don't learn these yet. Learn a few preludes first, because these, you can just tell by looking at it, are brutal. Seriously, if you are still developing your 2-handed piano playing, which even at this point you probably are, if you're at this advanced, but the fugues are notorious for being brutal compared to the preludes. So I recommend you start with prelude number 1, and then find the one in G major. It might take me too long to scroll through here, but just go in the order of the circle of fifths. So what that means is you start with C major, 0 sharp, 0 flats. Then you're going to go to the prelude with 1 sharp. That's the one in G. Then you're going to find the one with 2 sharps. That's the one in D. And just go through in that way. And that way you're adding onto the key signatures in a way to where you're not going to feel super overwhelmed already. Because if you start with the prelude in C and then you do the one in C sharp, it's really going to mess with you, because you're going from no sharps and flats to like, oh man, there's like so many going on. It's crazy. So approach them in a methodical way, going from the least amount of sharps to the full amount of sharps, and then the least amount of flats to the full amount of flats. So after you learn a few inventions, you don't have to learn every invention first, but learn maybe 4 and then move on to these preludes and make them a part of your regular practice routine. So if you're learning a piece you want to learn, which makes sense, piano should be fun. You also want to be starting out your practice routine with, and like I said, layered. So scales, and then do your scales like in thirds or in all that other stuff we said. Do a Hannon, a Cherni, and then, an invention, and then try a one of these. If you're serious about your 2-handed piano practice, you may be thinking like, oh man, this is going to take forever to add into my practice, right? That's probably an extra half an hour practice right there to fit all these things in. Well, you want to get better at 2-handed piano playing, don't you? So you got to put in that extra time, And even if you're not learning another piece on your own and you're just practicing this stuff, you're going to see results. It's not the most exciting stuff to play, although I do like playing a lot of the preludes and things like that. I know the scales can be a little bit dull for some people, but trust me, if you put the time into this stuff, it is going to pay off, and that's why I'm bringing it up today. All right, let's get on to the next thing, which actually you can start this next thing, the Beethoven theme and variations. You can really start that probably around the time you start the inventions. You don't have to be super good at everything before you start these Beethovens. Okay, as you can see that this theme and variations is a lot more doable. As you can see, it's a lot simpler with the rhythms and the notes going on between each hand, but there's still quite a bit going on. You know, you have different rhythms between each hand, you have different notes. So you're really branching out from that concept of starting with the same notes, same rhythms, and then same notes, different rhythms, and then different notes, different rhythms, things like that. You want to build on complexity when learning music. You don't want to just dive in to something way over your head. Sometimes it helps to do something a little challenging, but nothing like where you're just going to be like, I have no idea what's happening right now. So you want to avoid that. Okay, let's take a look here at the theme and variations. So theme and variations is the beginning the first page or so will introduce the theme, which is really the main melody of the piece, which for nel cor più non mi sento, nel cor più non mi sento, like that. I don't really speak Italian, so forgive me. And nor do I sing. But anyway, that's the melody that you're going to hear throughout the whole thing. I cannot believe I used to have trouble learning this. As I mess up. So that's all I'll play for you. I think you get the idea. So that's the theme. And when you're playing the variations, Beethoven will hide the theme in here. You still have the notes D, B, B, A, G, but now they have other notes mixed in there. Oops. And of course, if I was working through this on my own, I would really go through and fix the fingering. Fingering is super, super important when playing two-handed piano, mainly because it helps you move up and down the piano effectively. So you want to start with this one. Nel cor più non mi sento, the theme and variations. Learn the theme, and then try to learn as many of the variations as you can. Maybe even all. I think there's usually 6 variations. There's one in like 6/8, one in minor. So he really does a good job of changing it up so it doesn't sound like the same exact song again and again. So nel cor più non mi sento. I'll really try to link you to that sheet music in the description. Okay, if you're interested in learning more about two-handed piano playing, because of course you are, that's why you're here, right? Check out the playlist I'm going to post all around the place that you can click on. That will take you to that so you can learn even more. And of course, the link is going to be in the description. So this has been Tim from Lessons on the Web. Thank you so much for being a part of our classroom, and I'm going to talk to you in the next lesson. So keep learning, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so, so much.